Thanks for giving us your time today for VR Download. I'm Ian Hamilton in New York, joined by David Heaney from London as we discuss the next steps in personal computing. We're wearing Quest 3 headsets today with last generation Meta avatars. We've got hand tracking, built-in microphones, and I want to say thank you to all of our members and patrons in particular out there for supporting the work we do over on UploadVR.com. That's XR Developer News, Podum, the developer of Smash Drums, HoloNet, Mike Manzano, Richard Meller, Parmesan, and Qubits. I also see all of our regular YouTube viewers out there, Biggs, KC Chiefs Productions, F Meister, Caleb of NYC, CJ7, Arlen out there, Psycho, Alex, a lot of regular viewers out there, Subcog, everyone out there silently viewing us or catching up on 2x speed. Hope you had fun with David last week and with Kyle in weeks past. David, what do we have today?
Yeah, I see we have some people welcoming you back in the comments here. So our first topic today we'll discuss will be one that I actually meant to talk about last week, but just through a clerical error accidentally dropped from my notes. So it is actually a story from last week, but it is the Meta Horizon desktop editor getting the ability to AI generate 3D meshes, textures, and skyboxes. So that'll be our first topic. Then we'll quickly discuss the fact that Meta now sells Quest 3S refurbished for $270, but why you shouldn't buy that for the next few days. Then we'll have a section about immersive video. Firstly, we'll talk about the Insta360 X5. So that's an improvement on the leading handheld 8K 360 camera. So that's a $550 camera that you can buy and capture 360 and 180 video to watch yourself on your headset. We'll also discuss Horizon Worlds getting support for 3D 180-degree video for its events, such as concerts. Previously, it was only 2D 180, just like that camera. We'll then have a smart glasses section. Often when we discuss smart glasses, we go through the different types, the displayless smart glasses, the smart glasses with a HUD, the virtual monitor glasses or video display glasses, whatever you want to call them, like Xreal. And so our topic actually fit in very nicely to that. We have one about the Ray-Ban glasses with no display, one about Google's conceptual HUD glasses, and another about a capability for Xreal glasses. We don't have a kind of discussion about standalone AR glasses today, but we'll cover a lot of different types of glasses there. Our final topic of the day then will be looking at the top 50 best-selling Quest games of all time. Very interesting that Meta has revealed that now. You can see the list on uploadvr.com, and we'll kind of just discuss some takeaways. This isn't the game show, but we do kind of want to discuss that from an industry perspective, and it's just fascinating data to look at regardless.
Yeah, Don and I had a wonderful discussion earlier in the week. I encourage you to go check out that stream of us going and checking out Real Room as well as Relic. So Real Room is over on Apple Vision Pro. Lets you sort of recreate store shelves from a movie theater in your home, set all the movies on the screen, and then the Relic app had sort of spatial effects to the area around a movie. It was a real cool discussion. And then I saw, David, you did like 3 hours solo in this studio last week on your own, and people really enjoyed that. So I'm gonna try not to take you off topic because people really loved the way you drilled through the news last week. So why don't we just get right into this first news here and break it down for us?
It was the classic VR download situation of we'll hop in for a quick show. I'm sure it won't be 3 hours. And then, of course, it's 3 hours as always. Hopefully not today, though. I do kind of have a hard cut off at roughly 2 hours that I'm going to need to adhere to. So let's first talk about that AI generation story. So if you missed the news earlier in the year, in February, Meta released the Horizon desktop editor. It's a Windows flat screen PC application that allows creators to build virtual worlds, both for social and single player experiences for within Meta Horizon worlds. So it's kind of like a UEFN, Unreal Engine for Fortnite competitor, a Roblox competitor. In some ways, you could even argue a kind of higher level Unity competitor. And that replaces the in-VR tools for Horizon worlds, where you used to use like primitive shapes and pre-created models to build in VR. Now you build on a desktop. The flagship features, of course, where that you can import 3D assets and images and textures, import sound files, just like any other kind of PC application, bring that all in and then implement functionality using TypeScript. And at that launch, there were two AI generation features in Horizon Desktop Editor: sound effects and ambient audio. So you can type what sound effects you want it to generate. You can type the ambient background audio and it will AI generate it. But the news now, I guess, as of last week, is that they've introduced much more significant AI generation: 3D meshes, textures, and skyboxes. So you can essentially generate an entire virtual world step by step using this. And essentially, the generation of these 3D assets takes about 3 to 6 minutes each. So this isn't something like you can instantly do it. That is a relatively long time, but it's still a lot shorter time than if you were to create all of these assets by hand in something like Blender. And so Meta claims that this dramatically reduces the time needed to build a custom virtual world from weeks to as little as hours. Because this is happening on Meta's servers, there are rate limits. So for audio, it's 200 generations per day. For 3D meshes, it's 100 per day. For skyboxes, it's 50 per day. And I forgot to mention, you can also AI generate TypeScript, just as you might do in, GitHub Copilot or any of the other coding tools. That's very, very common across the industry to do AI code generation, and that's limited to 1,000 generations per day. But of course, you could use your own ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini for that particular use case. So you can see here on screen an example of a world where every asset here was AI generated. They even started from an AI generated concept art image. And yeah, you can kind of very clearly see now why Meta moved from in VR to desktop for now, because with 3 to 6 minutes per generation, you're not going to sit around and wait in VR for that, whereas it makes a lot of sense on a desktop. But one day, this is going to take seconds, right? Today it takes 3 to 6 minutes. One day it's going to take seconds. And then I can imagine them going back to in VR tools, because at that point, you can do the holodeck, right? You can point and say, generate me this asset that looks like this over here. And then, oh, no, change it so that that part's this color and that part's this color. But today, with today's technology, it's a much slower iteration process.
I'm looking at Parmesan's comment out there, just donated some money to us and a big member out there. So thank you so much for your support. It truly means an enormous amount to us. It drives my team to see our memberships grow. So thank you to all of our members for all of your support. And then Parmesan just specifically calling you out for doing the episode last week on your own, David. And I couldn't watch live, but your idea about batteries being placed in the side straps is extremely interesting. And then they're also saying they missed me, so thank you for missing me. And I'm glad to be back. I missed you all too. On this subject, David, I really like that idea of going full circle back to NVR editing tools. This move by Meta is indicative of a lot of the things we're hearing in the market, right? There's going to be a lot of also ran solutions trying to say that they're doing something better than Meta to the left and the right of us. But you've done a really great job in this article of outlining exactly how long the generation times are, what your rate limits are. Those are markers by which we're going to start comparing all the other efforts out there against and saying, well, are you really better than Meta? Because this is their line in the sand. This is how much they're starting with, and we expect them to improve over the time, exactly like you outlined, right?
Yeah, and you can imagine other things being AI generated too. For example, we could imagine an entire scene being AI generated instead of just one model at a time. They've also said, they announced at MetaConnect that sometime this year, 2025, they plan to introduce AI NPCs. So right now in this desktop editor, you can place NPCs. You essentially generate a new meta avatar for each NPC. So you build them with the same tools you would use to build your own meta avatar. And then you can use TypeScript for their functionality. And it's kind of just like a pre-animated typical NPC. But later this year, they want to have NPCs that you can talk to with your voice, and you give context about the world and the story if it's single player, or items if it's multiplayer. And then you can actually have a useful conversation there. And as Biggs is pointing out, there is this kind of tendency across the entire software industry right now. Vibe coding, as some people call it, Biggs is pointing out, where the idea is that how much can you do in terms of generating software or a virtual world through just using AI, even if you don't know programming at all. So it's kind of very topical for Meta to be approaching this.
Yeah, big area that we will be watching on an ongoing basis to see how this develops. I like the comments mentioning that the holodeck always is listening to you, ready to answer to those prompts. People kind of forget that the computer is always there, ready to respond to you. In my own house, I haven't gotten used to the fact that I don't have to say the word "hey" before addressing my AI assistant in my home anymore, right? It now is smart enough to just listen for its first word. Um, I'm seeing Not Suspicious out there, Wabo, Onakazi, LL. Thank you all for tuning in and participating in the comments. Always great discussion here. We're over at 100 viewers out there. We tend to build over the course of the show. I do have a hard stop today, too. I see VR Gamer Dude has just tuned in. I just want to make a call out to my whole team out there working tirelessly to cover everything in the news. We've got a big week for VR releases this week and next week. There's actually some really amazing content that is hitting both Steam and the Quest store. And we've got my team out there, Henry, Don, David, are all covering everything out there. And then we've got a bunch of freelancers that are doing an increasingly amount of cool work for us. So thank you to everyone on our team for just pulling together and covering everything amazing out there and putting a spotlight on everyone. So thank you guys. And yeah, David, what else do we want to say on this? We're ready to move on.
Yeah, there really is a lot of content coming in now, isn't there? Andrew Tech has a very interesting comment where they say they want image to 3D mesh. So right now, this is text prompt to 3D mesh. You describe what you want, but image to mesh would let you, draw in either a computer art program or just, with a pen and paper and then upload what you want your 3D model to look like and have it generated. Or you could pick some real world image, take a picture with your camera and bring it in. That would be very interesting to see Meta explore, but we haven't heard any indication that Meta specifically plans on that. Of course, though, you can import, tri-mesh 3D models into this program, so you don't have to use Horizon Desktop's editor AI tools. You can use one of the other models, one of the open source models even. You can run on your PC and do this yourself and import the model in. This is just what Meta's giving you for free inside this tool. And of course, you could use those third-party tools for Unity and everything else. We have a full-fledged developer here in the comments, Not Suspicious, of Airspace Defender, saying that this is a great game engine for teenagers and amateur game developers, but I still don't think Horizon World appeals to traditional game devs. And yeah, I think that's broadly true, right? Meta's focus here is for creators, kind of people who want to build a virtual world but aren't full-fledged developers, don't have the time or expertise to build a full-fledged application in Unity, and they just want to kind of use a higher level tool, just like what you see across the industry in Roblox, in Fortnite, and such. And then I just wanted to show some images just before we move on. Here is just an example in the editor of a traditional NPC that you can do right now with TypeScript. So someone's generated a zombie here that's used as an enemy. And then here is a screenshot Meta has shown of the AI NPCs that are coming later this year. Oh, I have another image here too, actually, of some of the pre-built NPCs I think you can put in: zombies, androids, chickens, skeletons. And then, yeah, back to this, which is the speech-to-speech AI NPCs that are apparently coming later this year.
Yeah, I don't know how much I want to go down this rabbit hole, but I'm seeing several commenters. Daniel saying children today are tomorrow's game devs. Andrew Tech saying Horizon is also cloud first, which means debugging locally is not a thing. That could be painful on the iteration process. The rabbit hole that I can go down is you go watch a previous video where I arranged store shelves around me inside Apple Vision Pro. It was really, really neat to be able to I guess, adjust what each individual box is on the wall on this shelf. And I was describing on that show with Don Hopper out there, like it would be really amazing if I could hand reorder the things on the shelf so that everything on the shelf is exactly the right order I want them to be. But I would love the same tools that I have in the physical world for sorting things and putting them in position on the wall exactly right that I have in the real world. I want that in VR to sort a little bit more intuitively. I also would love to make that shelf look 50 different ways, right? The tools in that the tools to adjust that shelf are very simplistic. I can knock out the backing behind the shelf. I can make the shelf floor to ceiling. I can adjust the number of rows and the number of columns, but I can't make the shelf look like a 1950s shelf or a 1920s shelf. I can't do all these AI generation things that you're showing off. Is so cool in Horizon. However, that shelf, I think, responded to the lighting of my room, right? Like, we're talking in complete different architectures here of the Vision OS system, where that platform, those things that you make might actually respond to your real world lighting and mixed reality. Where Horizon OS, we're talking pure VR right there. It's AI generation. What I'm just trying to outline for our viewers there is, you can create in both these platforms, but the routes are completely different. And I saw one person out there asking for photorealism. What is the path to photorealism from what we're seeing out of Horizon Worlds?
Yeah, I guess there's a few things you're kind of touching on there. One is that it would be interesting to have more accessible tools to build mixed reality widgets, for lack of a better word. As you say, you would love to have the kind of thing you're talking about. You're having your Blockbuster shelf with all your videos in mixed reality as a persistent pinned widget. Dare I say, an augment on the Horizon platform that Meta kind of showed off. It would be great to have more accessible tools to build those too. And Apple's Reality Composer Pro on its ecosystem is actually quite impressive, but it's still designed fundamentally to be used with Swift code that is programmed by hand. And they do have this Swift Assist that they tease at WWDC, but it's not kind of this higher level thing. It is kind of interesting that, with all of the talk about Meta's focus on mixed reality, the developer tool that they've built here is, as you say, for full VR. You could argue that Meta Spatial Editor and Meta Spatial SDK is their solution for mixed reality, but again, that's still designed around actually the traditional Android path of using, Kotlin or Java to build an application. I think you're right to kind of point out that there is a gap here. Where is the tool for regular creators, not developers, to build mixed reality experiences? Unless I'm completely forgetting about something, I don't think anyone's actually done that yet. And there is a gap in the market, I guess, for some company. Could be Meta, could be a third-party developer to come along and do exactly that. On the second question of photorealism, again, a lot of this is just around the constraint of being on a mobile chipset. The other is around the constraint of user-generated content, where, this is all stuff that people are able to generate on the fly. This is dynamically loaded in. You join one of these worlds, and it's not like you have to install a 1 GB file. The idea is you want to, within 15 to 20 seconds at most, be into one of these worlds. That means that, like, going through the process of baking lighting and downloading massive assets and light maps is not super practical. But you can imagine, just as the chipsets get more powerful over time, the graphical fidelity can increase through brute force.
I love our comment. We've got a whole discussion here going from Guy Godin, the creator of Virtual Desktop, questioning Horizon overall, and just to echo what Guy Godin is saying out there. One of the fail states I've heard it suggested for Horizon Worlds is the fact that it requires or uses the gamepad or uses your flat screen interface. Like, there's a whole interface built around touch screens on your phone. That's the opposite of immersion when it comes to hand-tracked interfaces in VR, where you've already built something way, 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 way more immersive than holding controllers in my hands, because of just how natural it is to have my physical hands. And at the opposite end of this, you're using a physical controller to interact with Horizon Worlds. But then you see these two responses. I loved, what was it? I think Guy called it an enormous waste of time. And then where was it? The response from Arlen saying, it is not a waste of money. Meta is just showing everyone else how to do it. Wrong. So I really enjoyed that. And then there was another response from Guy admitting that might be right, and then Jack responding that's a military idea, that even nobody is completely useless, even if they can only be used as a bad example. So Jack is saying that a drill sergeant told him that, and that describes that whole little discussion out there in the audience. So thank you for that, David. Anything else on this?
Yeah, so on the wide range of inputs thing, this is a struggle that Rec Room's gone through, that VR Chat's gone through, that any VR game or experience that is started in VR and moved out to flat screen has to kind of tackle. How do you build really good embodied spatial interfaces and interactions that can also translate easily onto a mobile touchscreen or a gamepad, as you say? And that is a challenge. Right now, I think Horizon actually does this fairly well in my experience. You still do get the physicality. They've done a lot of work in making sure that the same interactions can be used across mobile and VR without either being worse, but there is that trade-off, right? But I just want to point out that's very much not unique to Horizon. Rec Room, probably its biggest criticism from the VR enthusiasts who first started in Rec Room is that kind of constant shift away from VR as the primary focus there. When it comes to whether Horizon Worlds will be a success or not, I think it's far too early to tell. If you look at the time scale here that Meta is investing in this, if you look at how different it is today than it was 3 years ago, and how it's not even remotely the same application as 5 years ago, right? This is probably the biggest shift yet that we've seen, and it's just arrived in the past couple of months. The shift from these in VR tools to this desktop editor. You know, Meta's own studios and contracted studios were using an earlier version of this for the past year and a half or so, but now this is available to all the creators, and they're kind of getting rid of the NVR tools. So I would say it's tempting to make an analysis of where this is going, but if you look at how strong a priority this is for Meta, how much investment there is, the velocity of change, and with generative AI, the kind of possibility is the right word, that the velocity of kind of what a typical creator can build being extended here, we don't know. Let's see where this is in 2 years before we start making any pronouncements.
Yeah, 2 years is an interesting time scale, right? Okay, so Walkabout Mini Golf, fill in your bingo cards, right? That is a game that came out in 2020. We're now in 2025, and you can see the entire scale of expansion in that world, right? There are dozens of downloadable content worlds that you can add to the game, and you can see that they've grown from like one or two creators or three creators at the start to now dozens of creators are actually modeling these worlds through a whole process of building up each new course. And just David's timescale there of 2 years gives you the space to imagine, okay, well, what happens when you have 5 people who are natively generative AI creators, right? Like they've used every generative AI tool out there. They know how to refine a prompt very skillfully, and they find 4 other creators out there in the world who are as skilled as them with refining prompts and getting them to produce good results. Then they take all of that, that teamwork and apply it to a dynamic world like this. Do you get to a world that feels more lively than the world that the Walkabout Mini Golf team has made with a smaller team? And do you start convincing people out there that, like, oh, wait, this is actually what the job looks like on the other side of this robbery that everyone is imagining AI is doing of creative artists, right? We still have yet to see exactly what I'm describing, a team of 5 to 10 people using generative AI tools to produce something that is better than the content that existed before. And like leaning into it and saying, oh, yeah, we're not going back, right? Like we have yet to see those stories. Am I wrong on that, David?
I mean, I don't think it's as simple as whether you're wrong or right. I think you pose some really interesting questions there. I wonder how soon will we see one person build something that isn't better, but that is cheaper and loads instantly and is right there in the default user interface when you boot up a Quest. If there's an equivalent to a $20 or $30 app on the store in Horizon Worlds 2 years from now that is made by one person and either is free to play and sells you a ticket now and again for something for a quarter of the price, that's the kind of dynamics we're looking at here. I don't know if we're going to see better, but more per person, as you say, is kind of an interesting thing to point out. And we have some people with very strong opinions on this either way, but I want to just continue to say that I think this is one of those things we're just going to have to see what happens. It's very hard to kind of come up with prognostication about what might happen because the pace of progress in AI is just astonishing. We haven't seen any technology advance this quickly, I think, arguably in human history. And so we don't know what the world's going to look like in 6 to 12 months when it comes to this.
Yeah, David, we need to move on and get through our show here. I appreciate the ongoing discussion. I think the only thing I guess I there's a lot to consider here, and we'll catch it on an ongoing basis. The different parts of this. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like, there's the one guy. What I wanted to mention, I talked about on our last show. Go look for I Am Security on the Apple App Store, and you will see ripoffs of one of the top VR games on this headset that we're talking on right now in a flat screen version on an app store made by like another developer. They're not the original developers of I Am Security. And you can actually go find the original I Am Security and I Am Cat from the developers. And they've had to put in the title of the game, original game, in order to try to rise to the tops of the search using the fact that they were first to market with this very simple idea. And it's very hard for me to sort out, like, are they using AI in the original creation of I Am Cat or I Am Security? Or are they not? Like, and are these copycats now using AI in order to copy what the original one was doing? And then you've got it was a tidal wave was the way it was described in the comments, of just a tidal wave of this content overwhelming content moderators, so that content moderators look at this and go, wow, it hits all the requirements. This is 90 frames per second, and I'm going to have to hit the check mark on it, and it goes up to the store, and it's a total ripoff of what somebody else made a little bit earlier. So, David, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole. I just wanted to acknowledge
Sure.
that is part
I
of
mean, as
what
you
this
say, you're
is.
talking about Apple's App Store. People often talk about this as if it's a unique problem to Meta's store. It isn't, right? I use an Android phone. Google Play has the same problem. I have an iPad. The Apple App Store is the same problem. These platforms, they want to moderate as least as they can, because hiring a bunch of human moderators to go and look through everything is expensive. And then, you deny the wrong thing and somebody starts a lawsuit against you. Their ideal is laissez-faire. As long as you don't break the law, go for it and just let the market sort it out. Whether you agree with that or not, it's a completely different discussion, but it's very clear that this is not something unique to Meta. I don't think there's any store that's kind of highly curated anymore. Even the old bastions of the console stores aren't curated. We recently covered that flight simulator ripoff on PlayStation Store for PSVR 2. You would, back in the day, your console store didn't do this, right? And that was when Oculus Quest first came out. It was a massive news story that we covered, that they were going to take a console-like curation approach, and there was controversy around that. But you can't say that anymore, because consoles don't even take a console-like curation approach. We're in a different world now, and yet, as you say, with AI making it easier and easier to create these copycats, it's going to be a big mess, and we'll have to see how these platforms deal with it. But as you also say, we do have to move on to our topic, as tantalizing as a rabbit hole as that is for both of us, I'm sure.
Yep. Yeah. What do we got next, David?
Yeah, so this one we just want to briefly cover for a specific reason that I'll make clear. This is that Meta is now selling Quest 3S refurbished for $270. So that is a $30 discount over getting it new. However, until 8:59 p.m. Pacific time on Saturday, the new Quest 3S is actually on sale for the exact same price. And this is kind of the kicker. As far as we can tell from the people I've spoken to who have bought a refurbished headset, it doesn't come with Batman and Quest Plus. Now, that may have been an issue with them, but we've reached out to Meta for confirmation on this, haven't got a response. But I think that is actually the trade-off. Everything else when buying a refurbished headset is identical. The warranty is the same, the coverage, all of that stuff in terms of what you're owed as a consumer rights is actually identical between buying a new and a refurbished headset. So from your perspective, you don't lose anything out in that regard. And Meta claims, they go through and test it and fix everything up and clean it and all the kind of standard stuff you get from a certified refurbished unit. So that's not the constraint here. And I see someone saying $30 off for used. It's not used. Refurbished is very different than used. It really is. I know people who buy every iPhone they buy refurbished, and they can't tell the difference. I've seen them take it out of the box because I was curious, and it looked the same to me as a new one. But the trade-off here is from what I can tell, you don't get those bundled software advantages. So Batman Arkham Shadow is alone worth $50. Quest Plus is $8, so that's $24 for the 3 months. So, if you did want to play that game, just get the new thing. But if you just want, like, say you just want a wireless PC VR headset, you don't care about Batman Arkham Shadow, or you're buying the headset for a different game and you're really price sensitive, well, you can get $30 off. But again, don't do it until this weekend because you can get the new thing for the same price.
Did we still recommend people buy Quest 3 and 3S at this point, David? Because I feel like we have to put some kind of warning out there just for the longer term thinkers around eye tracking and the significance of eye tracking, right? Like we had Quest Pro that came and went, and we had this whole period where we were like, eye tracking, like maybe go consider a Quest Pro if you're a developer and you want to invest in the future of developing for eye-tracked platforms with Quest. But now we're leaving this phase of, like, we're not leaving, we're in the middle of this phase of Quest 3 and 3S being supporting hand tracking, not having eye tracking, still shipping with controllers. And I'm not sure, I don't remember there being a whole lot of big games on the Quest 3, 3S timeline going forward for release. Like, I don't remember any big funded games from Meta, at least, that are still yet to release on this headset in the next year. So I want to just throw that to you. What was that?
I mean, you have studios like, what is it called? Armature, the one that made Resident Evil 4. We don't know what they're working on next. Sanzaru released Asgard's Wrath 2. If you're making a purchasing decision, I wouldn't say, we don't know if Meta Studios are going to release for this. It does seem pretty likely to me. But, I mean, you brought up a whole bunch of different things here. I do want to kind of highlight what you said yourself there, is that we are still in the middle of the Quest 3 and Quest 3S era. We do not expect a Quest 4 for a year and a half. So late 2026 is when we expect to see a Quest 4. We strongly believe that there will not be a Quest 4 released later this year. I think the Quest 3 is still an excellent VR headset. I think especially for $500. The other thing, speaking about refurbished, that some of the commenters are bringing up here is that Quest 3S refurbished at only $30 off. Meh. Okay, if you're really price sensitive, that's a good deal. But what we have described as the best deal in VR, and I still do describe as the best deal in VR, is the 128 gigabyte Quest 3 refurbished, because you can get it for I think it's $380, and so that is $120 cheaper than a new Quest 3S. Now, a new Quest 3S comes with 512 gigabytes. So this is a quarter of the storage, but this is $120 off. It's only $80 more expensive than a Quest 3S. And I really kind of said this over and over. If you can afford the Quest 3, get the Quest 3. Don't get the Quest 3S unless you're very price sensitive. The difference between the Fresnel lenses in the Quest 3S and the pancake lenses in the Quest 3, not just the lenses themselves, but the fact that you can precisely adjust their spacing on Quest 3, whereas you can only move between 3 positions on Quest 3S, it is night and day. It really, really is. I think like the pancake lenses on Quest 3 cross a quality threshold that no previous mainline Quest has ever done. The Quest Pro, the same kind of lenses, but it is a dramatic difference to the point where I would say, Quest 3 I still recommend. I think it's a great headset. Even when eye tracking does arrive, we presume it will arrive in Quest 4. Developers are still going to be supporting the Quest 3S and Quest 3 out there for a long, long, long time to come. And by that time, you can sell it to someone else. There's still a good year and a half at least of this being Meta's highest end headset.
Well, I appreciate that. David gave that analysis from a very consumer-centric perspective. I want to throw out there for developers that I think if you're like it's a very complicated discussion. If you've never developed for a VR headset before, get a Quest 3S or a Quest 3 so you can start understanding how different VR headsets and spatial computing is from traditional flat screen computing. However, eye tracking, all indications we have are that eye tracking is going to be absolutely fundamental to the future of this platform. So if you are picking a moment to become a developer or a moment to spend a little bit more money as a developer on a headset that has eye tracking, you should probably do it in order to invest in the future of this interface and your knowledge of how to use it. Do you think that is fair, David?
In some cases, I think it depends what genre you're building. You're saying as a developer, it depends. If you're building, a first-person shooter, it doesn't hugely matter. Yes, there are advantages to eye tracking, for example. Obviously, on a technical level, eye tracked foveated rendering, yes, but that's not something you need to worry about on a game design level. As you point out, many times in the past, you can use it for like targeted aiming. So you throw a grenade and it's a bit better, but that's a feature you add on. In terms of like developing your app fundamentally for eye tracking, the genres where it makes sense are, for example, strategy, right? We pointed out how Civilization 7 VR has this kind of clunky way of control where because of how it's positioned, you're kind of awkwardly raising your hands to point with laser pointers and it just doesn't work. Whereas if you try something like Gears and Goo on Apple Vision Pro, you can instantaneously see that gaze and pinch, looking with your eye and pinching with your finger, is by far the ideal input mechanism for something like strategy. But right now, if you're a developer and you want to build for eye tracking, your choices at this exact moment, if you're talking about standalone rather than PC, you can go and get an old used Quest Pro. You can go get an Apple Vision Pro, but with the Apple Vision Pro, the development stack is like very, very different than Quest. I still think for the majority of developers, if you were a traditional game developer wanting to get in VR, just go pick up a Quest 3. You can worry about eye tracking down the line.
Well, what's silly is there's also PlayStation VR 2 out there floating in ether in between all of these platforms, right, David? The one that I was right about for the wrong reasons, getting PC VR support. It's an eye tracked foveated rendering supporting headset, but those tools are being built right now and they're very clunky and at the same time, right, the future is clear here. So I just wanted to point that out there. That like I appreciate all that context David put it in. You said something in there that was like at this exact moment these are your choices. And I think I just wanted that context to land with our developer viewers out there who are trying to think about how do I invest in a development tool for the future? Maybe now isn't the right time to buy that specific development tool. Practice your development,
Yeah,
but don't
I still
buy
think it
an.
is.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
you're always a little bit like, and I don't mean this in a bad way at all. You're in a good way, always a little bit into the future, looking at what's next. But developers have to target what's here today, right? There, realistically, unless this is a complete passion project where you're not caring about the return on investment, you want to target the 2 or 3 million people that own these headsets.
Yeah.
And realistically, for most developers still today, you want to target the 20 million people who own the old Quest 2. Like that's, I just want to be clear that that's still where we are. We're still not even at the place where developers mostly, unless they have a very specific vision of something that's either very high-end VR for standalone or fundamentally requires mixed reality, they're still supporting Quest 2.
Yeah, so we can get into this a lot, but I wonder if there's an assumption. So I really appreciated your context there, but I wonder if there's an assumption that we're going to see these two headsets reach 20 million install base or 30 million install base, 25, 30 million install base, compared with the Quest 2, which did reach that far, right? So we just in our minds would think like maybe this thing is a better product, it should reach a larger audience. What I want to push back on that is what happens if the other Horizon OS headsets, as well as Quest 4 Forward, all use eye tracking and all push a much lower price point as hard as they possibly can, right?
Well,
Like,
I don't think you're going to get both, right?
yes. So, but what I'm saying is, let's say an $800 headset comes out with eye tracking. It's the Quest OS platform, and Meta rolls out all these new tools to use gaze pinching, exactly like Apple Vision OS, like Apple's Vision OS is doing. What does that eat from the market availability for the 20 million that we're imagining this receives over 2 to 3 years? Don't people start going and buying the $800 headset? Maybe not in millions of numbers like they would the $300 headset, but still, if it's the right product at the right, what if they roll an OLED to that, right? Suddenly Meta has an OLED headset with eye tracking on it. How many millions of
Well,
people are suddenly like, oh, goodness, I'm ready?
I think price sensitivity is still very strong. I think even if it is, well, the OLED thing doesn't strictly matter for developers, right? You run your content doesn't know what screen it's outputting to. It just knows it's outputting to a screen. The eye tracking thing, though, yeah, people will move to it over time, but it'll for a developer, for most developers, again, unless it's their passion project where they're trying to push a vision, they're just going to look at a number. What percentage of headsets out there have eye tracking? Same thing when you're developing, for PC, right? You look what percentage of people have this functionality or this, level of capability on their GPU or CPU. What's the size of market? It's like with consoles, right? Even Sony and Microsoft obviously released their exclusives for their current generation of consoles, but it's only actually almost until the very end of the cycle until you see most third-party developers stop releasing for the previous Gen 2. And I think it's the same thing with this. Say you have a Quest 4 and Quest 4S that come out at the end of 2026 with eye tracking. It's going to be 2028, 2029, 2030 before most developers start targeting that as a baseline, because you can't ignore the millions of people who own these things. And it is unfortunate in a way, right? You could argue it's a massive strategic kind of misstep for the long-term future that these don't have eye tracking. You can make that argument. That's completely valid, but it is where it is. And there are, probably by the end of this year, there will be 5 million people or so that own these two headsets.
So there is, interesting. So there is a game that I tried on Apple Vision Pro just the other night called Aegis Core, Aegis. And it was recommended by someone in our audience for me to go try it out. And in the game, you have a floating like sphere here of energy. And what you do is you reach into it and pull out a gun. And so all you do is you reach into this ball and boom, there's a gun. And now I'm holding a gun here, two-handing it, and I'm using my trigger finger right here to pull the gun. Our audience knows how terrible that must feel, right? Like how that doesn't feel as good as a gun stock or as good as controllers, none of it. But man, I'm going to go grab a gun stock at some point to give me the haptics that are missing from this experience. Like this is the path forward, and it needs that missing piece of haptics as well. But like, so many situations, I'm going to use my headset because I don't have my controllers nearby. And it's really, really hard for our audience to wrap their heads around the idea that their headset is going to be more useful to them without the controllers that are the reason they use their headset right now.
Oh, we were going to get in that controller debate. I don't know how much time we have to get into it, but I just want to point out, like, you're saying this as if it's hypothetical. You can use these headsets with like controllers. If you leave your controllers and, if you forget about them, if your controllers
with
are
a
thrown out a window
subset of the games, right? Of the subset.
Even when you get eye tracking, it's not going to make every game randomly not support controllers. As you point out yourself, you need those haptics. Even when we have headsets that are much more capable without having controllers, there's always going to be an advantage to having those controllers, right? And as you say, some people even go even further and get kind of custom controllers for rifles and tennis rackets and bats. It doesn't, it's all of them at once, right? You choose your input modality based on what current use case you want.
All right, let me take this opportunity before we get into the next subject to make my pitch for AirTags Pro. Okay, or AirTags 2. Okay, I want a MagSafe capable AirTag. You just snap it onto the same connector you use for your Apple Watch, right? And it starts charging up again. And then I want to take those AirTags and I want to snap them to any device in my house so that they provide me active location between the AirTag and my headset, and we're done here. We can move on, right? As soon as my tracking runs out of power, I take the little AirTag off the thing and I put it back on the MagSafe charger. Or maybe I swap out the ones, right? I've got one on the charger to put it on the other thing. I've got the Mocopi trackers, and those go into a charging case, and they're the same basic idea. I need this. We need this as VR consumers to solve and move us along past this area of discussion. David, what's our next story?
I was just going to say, you've just added magnets to the Pico motion trackers, right? Like ByteDance is offering this to you right now. You can do all sorts of cool stuff with this. As I said before, you can literally pass through data to these things and they will transmit. So you can set up your own kind of custom rifle. You don't even need a battery. These things will provide power and data provided the headset. We just have to keep praising ByteDance for that. That actually is a very impressive product. I never thought I'd say the phrase praising ByteDance, but yeah, let's quickly move on to this next section where we talk a little bit about immersive video. So the first story is just something we want to cover because despite the fact that this is only 2D 180-degree video we're talking about, um, you could argue that, like, what's the argument that's been made about smartphones for a decade now? The best camera you have is the one in your pocket. Well, for many people, the best camera you have is the one you can afford. We often talk about how you can use your iPhone and similar devices now to capture regular 3D rectangular video. This is kind of the opposite. It's not 3D, but it is 360 degree. And there's a lot of our viewers and readers who own an Insta360 camera, one of the older ones, X2, X3, X4. Well, now they've come out with X5, and let's see, I have some notes here about what's specifically changed. It's the same resolution as before, right? It's 8K at 30 FPS, 5.7K at 60, or 4K at 100, but they have made the sensors dramatically larger, so they bring in significantly more light. They have a much more powerful chipset, 140% more powerful for much better image processing. They super sample now, so they actually capture at 11K and record at 8K. Their active HDR mode, which is on the X4, is excellent, can now run at 60 frames per second instead of 30 frames per second. They have a new low light mode, and arguably more importantly than any of that, these lenses are now made of a much more durable glass, and they can be replaced. So if you have thrown this thing, or dropped it in the middle of recording something, instead of having to replace the whole thing, you can literally just personally swap these out. And yeah, this is a whole standalone device, does recording and everything, and stabilization and all of the image processing that you need for $550. And you can really quite easily then, export these off to PC, transfer them over to your Quest headset and watch them over there. So I understand that a lot of people are going to be like, it's not 3D, it's not 3D. Well, it's $550 and it, fits in your pocket and you can record your own stuff. So I understand that it's not 3D. That's very disappointing. Obviously, this would be a much larger and more expensive device if it was 3D. It's still cool for a lot of people. I still hear from a lot of people that say, I love the fact that I can record 360-degree videos of things that I do, my own family, my own sports, my own events, my own things. And yeah.
Yeah, I don't love this camera category. And I understand it's not necessarily the 3D. I mean, that is part of it, but the only time I ever see videos coming out of these glasses, or sorry, the coming out of these lenses and these cameras is from people who are sharing video of a very bad interaction. Like this is the camera you wear when you are on a motorcycle and crashing at 90 miles an hour on the freeway, and you want to produce content for the internet, even though you've injured your body horribly. This is the video that you want to be able to edit for publication.
I mean, sure, that's what some people use it for, but other people use it to upload to YouTube, right? So last year, they upload sports and things like that, skiing, water sports. There are YouTube channels that do this, right? I tested them last year for the reason that last year YouTube added support for 8K 180-degree video, or 8K 360 video, or was it 180? Whatever it is, the point is that it's on YouTube now, so you can upload this stuff to YouTube very easily. And yeah, I mean, obviously people use it for bad things, right? People use smartphones for bad things. Some people use it to record them committing crimes. Some people use it to record their kid's birthday, or like these are just use cases. The device itself isn't kind of for that. But I see a lot of people in the comments saying that what they really want to see is an affordable, high quality 3D 180 camera. And you could argue that that is more valuable for the VR use case than a 360 camera. I don't know of any right now that are like actually very high quality 8K 3D 180, all the processing done on board. If anyone does know of one, you let us know in the comments and we'll certainly investigate it. Maybe this company will make their own. But I mean, everything I've heard from the people who do own these cameras, they think it's great for what it is, capturing 360 video.
No, our commenters are suggesting that this is an auditor's camera, or the camera you would use when inspecting a facility. And you can think about that, right? Like you've got a walkthrough of a $1 million facility, and you miss something, and then you've got the footage to go back and scrub and go, oh, that's we actually need to train the AIs in the future to look for those things in the camera footage. Um, I get it, David. I'm just what my point was that like the video this captures is usually like too shaky for me to be interesting. It's
Oh,
not
like
3D. It's
the stabilization on this is excellent. I will say you can go and look at the footage.
but
The stabilization on this is remarkable. They're really remarkable. It isn't shaky at all.
okay.
I've seen sample footage from it.
What about a speck getting on one of these lenses? A single speck of dust. It makes the video unwatchable if you expand that out to your full
I hear that.
360 degrees.
So they actually have on their PC software spec correction and things like that for things like dust. They really have thought this through. Again,
Okay.
I want to say the fact that it's not 3D is a huge disadvantage. But when it comes to just being a 2D 360 camera, like everyone that owns this thing, the X4 predecessor, says it is excellent. I've seen the footage from it. It's very, very well executed. It's just, you could argue it's fundamentally flawed because it's not 3D. I feel like we're going in circles here, but yes, it does suck that it's not 3D. But for being a 360 camera, for being $550 for an entirely end-to-end solution, right? This isn't just something you plug into another computing system. You just capture and that's it, done. I still think it's pretty cool.
We are going in circles and we need to move on. I'm just going to make the argument that this is useful for cutting flat screen videos from not for enjoying in VR for extended lengths of time like a 3D video would be.
Sure, I think
that's my argument.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you're fundamentally against 2D 180 degree video and 360 degree video, I am kind of myself too, and we'll talk about that as our next topic. Funny enough, but I'm always struck by the fact that when I say 2D 180 degree or 2D 360 is useless, we always get people contacting us saying, you know what, I actually captured this and watched it in my headset and I really enjoy it. Or, I watched the NBA games on Quest in 2D 180 and I freaking love it. I bought my Quest for this and I love it. So I just want to kind of repeat that for some people, this is useful and valuable. I think it's really cool that it's possible. Before the X4 last year, the idea of a $500 camera that could even do this was science fiction. Right? Not science fiction, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it was ridiculous. This was something that cost thousands of dollars. And yes, just like our commenters, just like you, I'm waiting to see who's going to have the Insta 360 moment for 3D 180. We talked recently about that Blackmagic camera for professional productions at $30,000. Who's going to deliver the $500 camera that can do almost the same thing using a lot of these image processing techniques that they use to kind of force multiply to punch well above their weight of the actual capture? Let's see.
Yeah, I appreciate CJ out there moving us along, suggesting let's get to the next story here. Yeah, let's move right on to the next story here. And I'm going to have to, I think we're at 1 hour left for me when I have to bounce out of here. I don't know when you're going to have to get going.
We don't actually have that many stories this week, so we should be fine. So yeah, the next story, funny enough, is about the supremacy of 3D 180 degree video over 2D 180 degrees. So we're shifting from 360 now to 180, but essentially Meta has been showing these pre-recorded events like concerts in Horizon Worlds and in the Meta Quest TV app. And so these include artists like, Sabrina Carpenter, Doja Cat, Shawn Mendes, really big names. And if you were to watch these in the app on your Quest headset called Meta Quest TV, these were 180 degree 3D, like we can argue that the resolution wasn't, as good as it should be. The bit rate wasn't as good, but it was 3D. However, if you were to watch these same exact videos, but on a different app on your Quest headset, Horizon Worlds, it was in 2D. And Meta actually, remarkably given this difference, massively promoted the Horizon Worlds version and kind of always underplayed the fact that you could even watch these at all in the Meta Quest TV app. So it's very likely that for most people that watch these concerts that Meta advertised so heavily, like Sabrina Carpenter, right? That's an enormous name. They were watching it in 2D 180, despite the fact that their headset was fully capable of watching it in 3D 180. So the news here is that they have now corrected this. Now in Meta Horizon Worlds, if you're watching one of these concerts from now, they are doing it in 3D 180. And so right now, how they do this is you can't always watch these forever. It's not like a library. It's kind of a rolling out thing. So right now, what's available is a Lesso concert, a Bleachers iHeartRadio session, and as of an hour and a half ago, they are now replaying the Doja Cat concert from 2023, but in 3D. And so um, you could argue, why would you ever watch it in Horizon Worlds in the first place if you can just watch it in the MetaQuest TV app? The advantage here is you can do it with friends, right? So you and a friend can start either a private world or a public world in the Music Valley of Horizon Worlds and watch these together side by side. And you can also join from mobile, though you're obviously not getting the 3D aspect there. So this is the Doja Cat concert that's now showing. And, I want to point out again that the resolution here in bitrate is not as good as what you see from something like the Metallica experience in Apple Vision Pro that Ian and I have both raved about and how good it is. But for the fact that you're doing this on a headset that is, 1/7 the price or less, and obviously a lot of people are going to be a fan of Doja Cat and not Metallica, and vice versa, it's still pretty cool. I'm just glad that the default experience for watching these on Quest is no longer 2D 180.
Oh goodness, there's a lot of things to get into from our comments here. I'm gonna mention the name Brad Herman at Spaces. Mention I think it's Jeff Norris, Dr. Jeff Norris at NASA. And I can't think of the CEO's name of NextVR right now that I spoke to. But I saw Guy Godin asking for where the NextVR purchase went at Apple. Well, I think David just showed it here a second ago. That is the Apple Immersive Video platform. I went face to face with Apple's marketing people, and I just gave you the names of the people that I would like to speak to inside of the Apple mothership, who I spoke to before they joined the Apple mothership, and we're developing all these core technologies that we're using today. Spaces, we still haven't even seen the learnings that they did at Spaces over the years realized inside the Apple platform.
As far as I'm aware, the Spaces team were heavily involved in spatial personas that shipped.
Yeah, so during the middle of COVID, I'm sitting there on my couch with my kid sitting right next to me, and I get a call, I think it was from Brad Herman, who says, who's basically like, I've cracked it. Let me show you this off to you. He pulls up a Zoom call with me, with him represented as one of these avatars, right? An avatar as simple as this. And he's gesturing to me, talking to me as an avatar. And what he's done is he's hacked together a virtual cam into another existing video chat platform, and he's shown me the way he does it. Within, I want to say, a year or so, that was purchased by Apple quietly, subtly, and Apple will barely even acknowledge that it went and purchased this company. Another one out there was NextVR, Apple Immersive Video. They did the exact same thing. They had leading streaming technology for capturing 3D. They have a whole bunch of patents for doing so. The cameras that you will go and see that are capturing Apple Immersive Video look very similar to the cameras that they had at NextVR. They laid off a bunch of people at NextVR before they finally got acquired. Sorry, David, go ahead.
No, I was just going to highlight again, they are the same cameras. Like, to just be crystal clear here, NextVR became Apple Immersive Video. Apple Immersive Video is what became of the acquisition of NextVR. And if you have an Apple Vision Pro, you can see that on Apple TV. If you don't, walk into an Apple store and ask to try it. Maybe if it's very busy Apple store, you can book in advance on the website, but you can go try this yourself in a store. And that Spaces acquisition, it shipped in Apple Vision Pro. You can, in an Apple Vision Pro, open Zoom, open FaceTime, open Teams, whatever, and your avatar is put into a virtual webcam. Like that was there even before the spatial personas. And we've talked recently about how Meta is kind of, you could argue, copying that in Horizon OS with the Meta avatars as well, right? It's an idea that they're kind of pushing as well.
So there's a piece. So I remember talking with the people at Spaces, and they clearly had very long visions, the same long vision shared by David and I over like what does this look like when we get to the 2030s? And one of the things Spaces had, so David just explained it perfectly, I've explained it perfectly, but there was a whole nother element of learning that the team at Spaces had. And what they had was a physical location at the Irvine Spectrum Mall in Orange County, California. You could walk out the front door of their physical location to an Apple store in one area, and I think there was a Microsoft store at the Irvine Spectrum, I can't remember. But the point being, they've picked the same sort of real estate picked by Apple for virtual reality. Okay. They had an actual arcade you could go into, not an arcade, it would not even call it that. You go into the front of their office and you get your face scanned by a 3D face scanner right at the front of the Spaces location. Then you go back and you put the trackers on your feet, on your arms, I think it was, and you get a rifle put in your hands. You put on the headset. You get a backpack. I think it was. I might be missing some of the specifics. But then you're in VR, and what they've done is they've turned you into a Terminator cyborg. They've come up with their own terminology for what you are because they've taken the terrible 3D face scan of you from at the entrance of their place, and they've plastered it onto your Terminator face. And now you're a Terminator cyborg with a human weird face, and you're walking around a mall with a gun, and you're a Terminator, right? We walk out onto this platform, and what they had is the shaky platform where you and a couple of the Terminators have to like defend humanity in the future and accomplish this task. They had physical props you could go and move around. Tell me that you cannot convince me that Apple is not going to use Brad Herman's knowledge and the knowledge of the other people at Spaces to one day turn Apple stores into that experience, to one day bring this fully haptic experience that we've enjoyed at arcades like the Void and Dreamscape Immersive. Those were all cool. But the backpack has to go away. The weird 3D face scan needs to get improved. You don't need to spend 10 minutes strapping things to your body. It should be more, usable than that. And this is a whole part of the technology that they bought at Space. That expertise, those people. Dr. Jeff Norris, the last guy I have to mention, I talked to him around 2013 or so, right, when he was working at NASA. He went and got acquired by Apple. But I have a whole article out there where I quote the quote is this long in text of him saying that the television was the right platform for us as viewers, humans, to go to the moon with the astronauts who went there, right? You could show the landing on the moon to 60 people all gathered together in a single room around one television. But he says that's not the right technology now, right? We talked more than 10 years ago now about the idea of a Mars lander going down there and 3D scanning the entire landscape and beaming back that mesh data to Earth and then texturing on what you've got there. And when we get there to Mars, right, when we put people on footprints on Mars, you and I should be able to be standing there together in a private instance, right? Just you, me, and in a private room code with a couple other people. And we'll watch the astronaut walk down the steps, and we will feel like we're standing there on Mars with the first astronaut as they're coming down. That person got hired by Apple. And my favorite place to go into VR in the year 2025 is to go on the moon, right? To go in the simplicity of the moon and just tune out the rest of the world. And I look at those, I spend 30 seconds just looking at the geometry of those rocks over there and the way they're landing on the surface of the moon. And it's hard for me not to see the influence of all these experts that I've worked with all over the years. So I just want to push back at all of our viewers out there that, like, yes, it's on a $3,500 headset locked away from all of our prying eyes right now. But these geniuses are out there building this for much more affordable hardware over the long term.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've both had kind of the privilege of watching over the past decade or so, and even beyond a decade, right? You're talking about some ideas that spawned before that, is these crazy ideas by these very inventive people go from laboratory concepts to consumer hardware today. And there's so much that we all take for granted as part of our headsets today, as part of our software experiences, that were just these crazy ideas back then, that were just these visions. And, today we talk of all these visions of the future. Well, 10 years ago, the things that we're all doing today that we, like every technology, it becomes normal and just part of our lives. And just, oh, well, of course, that's what we have now. Just a few years ago could sound completely crazy or unviable or very, very far off. Just a few comments I want to respond to here. Andrew Tech said that when they got their refurbished Quest headset, they did get Batman included with it. So that's very interesting. I've heard that some people didn't. Maybe this is just a glitch. Maybe you weren't supposed to. Maybe you were supposed to. It seems at least that it's not fully reliable. One other thing, Daniel Leeper has kind of pointed out that I've got the time wrong for the Doja Cat concert going live. It's actually in a couple of hours from now, something like 4 or 5 hours from now, where they are restreaming that in 3D. And I saw another comment here that I've kind of missed of someone saying just that they have already tried the 3D Alesso concert in Horizon Worlds, and they said that they really enjoyed it. And yeah, like if you're a fan of this music, just to kind of bring it back to this, if an artist that you're a big fan of is suddenly playing in immersive 180-degree 3D video and whatever platform it happens to be, you're going to really enjoy it, right? It's something that's great. On Apple Vision Pro, obviously, the crazy thing about that Metallica concert is that even if you're not a Metallica fan, you're going to be like, holy shit, this is amazing. And that, for me, just kind of points to how incredible it will be when this is something that's just normal for every concert to also be streamed. And I see a lot of people kind of pointing out that they want live streaming. It's one of the things that NextVR as a startup pre-acquisition was showing off, the idea of live streaming these events. And that really is the next frontier. I don't know who's going to get there first, Apple or Meta, but that will be a significant moment. And we'll be right here in VR Download reporting on it. And we'll have an article in UploadVR. And maybe it's next year, maybe it's the year after that. But I am very confident that Apple and Meta are both very focused on this, because whether it's sports, whether it's concerts, whether it's other events, theater, even the ability to live stream these things opens up so many new possibilities.
Yeah, so I think it was Koya asking us to explain ourselves in ripping apart the VR 180 platform, and we weren't so much ripping apart the platform as just saying that on Apple Vision Pro with the OLED display set that way, with the attention to detail. And then also what Koya is saying here, the cinematic language and best practices for immersive video are still being developed. Our community is figuring out. I even want to film a word from a VR 180 music video. It's coming. Yeah. So these things are still getting worked out, and you have to spend an extraordinary amount of money to see some of the best work that's being done in the medium, right? Imagine going to see the best movie, the movie you love in the world the absolute most. I don't know. Let's say it's 2001: A Space Odyssey, or something. Like, you want to go see that, and you go spend $30 to go see it in 70mm projection, and someone's going to rip me apart on however that movie was captured. But you go and pay for it. You go to the theater. You go sit down, and the projectionist has projected it at 30% less brightness than it really should be. So all of the things that you want to see, you cannot see. Those are some of the restrictions facing VR 180 creators today on some sites, sorts of headsets. Like, you're having to push a certain number of pixels through a certain compression algorithm onto a display that isn't necessarily showing you all of the detail that was originally on your capture, and all of that tears at the reason for why you're doing this capture in the first place. But David and I are both big believers that when it's done right, it looks amazing.
Exactly. And, as we've discussed in recent weeks, Blackmagic is already in beta with having DaVinci Resolve support for Apple Immersive Video. Their $30,000 Apple Immersive Video camera is coming out soon. We expect that this entire genre is going to heat up very soon.
I want to make a pitch for Amaze VR concerts, though. Okay, so a completely different format, but you need to compare what that format provides to the format that we have just spent the last 30 minutes discussing. So Amaze VR concerts are stellar. They're wildly personal, and they're a different sort of format here that you need to comprehend relative to all of this. So, David, what's our next story?
Yeah, I was just going to say, on Amaze VR, it's kind of a little bit more pre-produced, right? It's a lot more of like a specific, separate thing, whereas the advantage of the kind of content we're talking about, just showing 180-degree 3D versions of existing concerts, is that the artist doesn't need to do anything different, right? You set up the stage with some extra cameras, but you're still performing in front of a full audience. It's not, the cost is a lot lower than if you're doing a specific thing.
So Casey Chief saying, why do I not have the option to watch everything in 3D and VR? Beautiful question. We understand it. You can do AI upgrades to still images on most platforms right now. You can go and tell the system, hey, I want to add depth to this, or virtualized synthetic depth. Go find the feed of someone like Azad Balabanian, one of the true artists of this media. He's been capturing 3D media for years in every single format he's found, and he's out there on one of the platforms talking about the difference between that simulated 3D layer and pure, actually captured 3D media that is correct for the distance between your eyes, captured from two different angles. There is a difference, and you can feel it. That gap is going to be closed by tools, won't it, David? But I'm wondering how long it will still feel different.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be for a long time. The difference will close, but there always will be a fundamental difference between having a real capture from two cameras separated versus trying to hallucinate that depth. And you can see the difference. You absolutely can see the difference. It's better than 2D, but you could almost call it like a 2.5D. Real 3D is just fundamentally better.
So Guy saying the bulk of the tech with NextVR was about live streaming VR 180 content. I was expecting more live stuff. We are too, but there is no point in them doing live stuff until they've got millions of subscribers to access with a headset that is less expensive than $3,500.
I think also on a technical level, like these demonstrations they did, it wasn't like they were doing this to consumer headsets at scale. These were very specific, tailored demos using expensive and custom and very kind of temperamental hardware. We always talk about how it's easy to do something once. It's very, very hard to do it at scale in both hardware. It's much truer in hardware, but even in software, building a prototype that works in one specific scenario and in a kind of showcase is a very different thing from doing it at scale. Being able to, like, even being able to produce current immersive video has a long processing time. I see Kuya pointing out that YouTube, for example, can take up to a week to process all the way up to 8K. Imagine trying to do all of this live. It is tough. It is difficult, but we expect that one of these companies is going to pull it off in the next few years.
Yeah, I love that. Very wonderful discussion going on in our audience. Guy mentioning the licenses for the NBA, NFL, etc. I want to say Apple has an agreement to broadcast every soccer game, every football game, or American Football League, American Soccer League. I think MLS. So I think they've got the rights to show every MLS game with no blackouts. I think it even says in the text, right? And everyone at home is used to the blackout situation, right? If you have any sport whatsoever that you love in the world, you've had to deal with the fact that the local broadcaster for your sporting team, whether it's Miami, Chicago, New York, LA, right? They've paid a big chunk of money to be the exclusive broadcaster for that team's games, a certain number of games per year. And then they're also selling the rights nationally to all the people who are fans of that team who don't live there, right? We don't have anywhere near the scale of economics to warrant that type of live broadcast in VR. But you can mark our words that as soon as there is a headset from Apple that's affordable enough for everyday people to go, I want to watch every game in headset this way. Like they will put the cameras in place before Meta. They're not going to get beat to putting. Ooh. Yeah, the 3D 180-degree cameras in place. I don't think they're going to get beat.
I wouldn't be too sure. I mean, I wouldn't bet on Apple or Meta getting there first, to be honest. I think it could go either way. I don't think there's any particular reason to believe that one will beat the other.
No?
We'll have to see. You could be right. I don't know.
I could be wrong. Yeah, I appreciate David calling me out on maybe being wrong.
I think it will be Apple or Meta, right? Like it will be Apple or Meta. I think we can say that. That
Oh,
if
well,
there's the only two companies investing in XR at this scale is Apple and Meta. Like Google is starting to invest, but if you look at the industry, there are only two companies that have spent dozens of billions of dollars on this space, and it's Apple and Meta.
so what happens when someone takes? We're already getting press releases from people who have bought the Blackmagic cameras for shooting Apple immersive video. So David and my inbox are already getting hit with people who are like, "We've put down $35,000 or whatever that price is to shoot an Apple immersive video." My question is, David, what happens when someone buys one of those cameras completely free and clear to do with what they please, and then produces one Apple, produces content for Apple headset, and they also let all the Quest headset viewers out there enjoy the exact same content captured with the Apple immersive video camera?
Yeah, so I mean, because of how that's designed and because of the pipeline here, you kind of have to go through a conversion step to put it on Quest right now. It does have a loss in quality, so you're going to fundamentally get less quality than when you have on Vision Pro, but they should be able to use that same camera there. The investments that Apple is making in immersive video should transfer over to Meta. When it comes to 3D in general, D130 VR's comment earlier was more broad, I think, of just why can't I watch everything in 3D? I just think we have to once again point out that Mr. James Cameron wants exactly that, right? We're not talking now about 180 and 360, but when it comes to the question of why isn't every, HBO, Apple TV, Netflix show in 3D? Why isn't every Hollywood movie in 3D? Well, James Cameron wants to change the question to be, well, it is in 3D, right? That's literally the purpose of his new company, Lightstorm Vision. They want to make it so easy and so cheap for 3D to be part of the production pipeline that every Hollywood production is in 3D, just like almost everyone is in 4K today. They want it to just be like, you get a camera and it's 3D. How far he succeeds in this, who knows? But I mean, James Cameron is obviously someone who has an enormous resources financially and enormous sway in the industry, enormous contacts in the entertainment industry. So I would say keep an eye on Lightstorm Vision over the next few years to see what they can do in terms of bringing flat, or I should say rectangular content into 3D. Because I think, I think he seems very, very set on this. And like, this is his new project, right? Like, this is what he's doing right now. This is his primary focus, making 3D standard in the entertainment industry.
So now we're going to go off on a completely different tangent if you let me go too long on this. But Jon Favreau, the director of so many Hollywood movies, Lion King, Iron Man movies, helped launch that whole cinematic universe. He did Gnomes and Goblins back in the early days of room scale VR, and he is the person behind Encounter Dinosaurs on the Apple Vision Pro. And Encounter Dinosaurs on Apple Vision Pro, the dinosaur walks into your room and he looks photorealistic. Like it looks more, he's rendered with more realism than the Jurassic Park dinosaur from 1992 or whatever. And he's standing there in my living room. And I take my hand like this in front of the dinosaur, and the dinosaur tracks my hand as I move it right in front of his face. And he's like, I get this real impression that I'm in Jurassic Park and this dinosaur is really there. I'm talking to a bunch of directors, a bunch of Hollywood directors at this point. Like I talked to a couple of different ones at this point who are all like, how do I step out of the frame and continue telling stories while giving so much freedom to the user? There's movies like Gemini Man, which were shot at extremely high frame rate. And then you've got the Hobbit movies that were shot in 3D at high frame rate. And if you've ever had the privilege of going to watch, not the privilege, the shame of going to watch The Hobbit in high frame rate, you started noticing how the sets look fake because you can see how plasticky they look because of the extra frames filling in all that detail for you.
Yeah.
From the bottom up, every filmmaker is having to rethink their craft for virtual reality, and we're seeing those experiments being tested around us one at a time.
Oh yeah, when you're filming in 180 degrees or 360 degrees, that whole the set looks fake thing comes even worse, right? It doesn't feel, everything has to be perfect. Even I remember Apple talking about this when they were developing Submerge, the first Apple immersive video short film, and let's see if I can bring a footage up of it here, or an image. I mean, they were saying like the actors had to be really, really careful about how they acted. The whole set design had to be careful because otherwise it was almost as if you were watching a production of people acting rather than actually watching something in real life. And the way that they have to act is fundamentally different because the entire manner in which a normal rectangular film is shot, the way in which people act is actually not how you would act in real life. Like people say, oh, that was a very realistic kind of performance, but it's still not what you would expect from, if you were to actually see this thing occur in reality. There is like a film acting thing, just like there's a TV acting thing. And when you do something in 180 degrees or 360, you have to kind of put that on its head because otherwise it doesn't look right. You have to act in a completely different, more realistic way that maybe makes some stories and some ideas work less well and makes others work better. And I think, as the commenter earlier pointed out, we still are in the early days of learning about this. This is what the director here behind this, who's the same director of All Quiet on the Western Front, was talking about. That this is like we're back 100 years ago when in the equivalent of regular cinema. People are learning the design language, the language of cinema all over again with this. And as you say, it'll be very interesting to see all of these Hollywood directors come in, as well as people who are native to this, right? People who haven't even got the baggage of traditional movies and come at this from scratch. People who, kids who are, 16, 17, 18 right now, who pick up a simple cheap camera, and then when they produce something better, they save up and get a proper 3D 180 camera and start producing stuff for this medium.
I might have been wrong about The Hobbit being in 3D high frame rate, as I memory recalls. I could have been wrong on that. Might have just been high frame rate for that film, so I apologize if I had that wrong. David, what do we have next? And I'm seeing the conversation just going on about this extensively. Well, if you're a VR 180 creator, if you're doing 3D video, we will report on the stuff that catches our eye. That's the way we handle everything. So send us emails to tips@uploadvr.com. You can also find our individual email addresses if there's someone specific on the team that you want to reach. We get very overwhelmed inboxes and we don't respond to a lot of the messages, if we're being honest, because it's just so overwhelming. But we do read anything like that is clearly, you need to look at this, right? We go and investigate as much as we can, and it's a whole step of like taking that email and getting into headset and trying it out, and sometimes it takes months. You can send us multiple emails if we don't respond or catch our eye the first time. We love hearing about all the creative work being done in VR in every way, shape, and form. And we apologize if we haven't. If you haven't caught our eye, you've reached out to us in the past, you can try again, and we're sorry that we've missed you. But I just want to make sure everyone out there knows that we care about raising up really interesting projects that are getting under noticed, right? We want to make sure people notice them.
Some really fascinating discussion going on in the comments around this topic. I'm seeing multiple people, including Jack B, say that VR video is almost more like a stage play than a movie. And I think that's really true. I was at a play about a month ago, and that really struck me. Firstly, how well that would work in immersive video. If you were to do one performance of a play where you just have one of these Blackmagic cameras right at the front, kind of raised up a little bit, that would be really compelling content in a lot of ways. You could come basically, instead of trying to say, how do I take a movie and put it into 180 3D, take an existing play. They're already kind of designed. The whole structure is designed to kind of essentially be a 180 3D experience, except in real life. And that would kind of translate a lot better, I think. And we have Kuya pointing out that in film they say show, don't tell. In immersive video we say don't just show, simulate. The VR 180 cam represents a viewer's head, and thus actors and cam op must lean into this to facilitate the same. So truly fascinating discussion here. And yeah, I can't wait to see what happens here. As we've said before, despite the fact that all this has existed on a basic level for 10 years now, this is what we were doing with Samsung Gear VR in 2014 and Oculus Go in 2018. It's only now where it doesn't suck, by which I mean the headsets have sufficient resolution and comfort and hand tracking input, that this can all be done in an end-to-end way that's actually good and compelling. And Brandon Jones here is backing up Ian and saying that the Hobbit films were definitely both high frame rate and 3D. So don't think you worry about that.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm loving this discussion. I want to make a shout out, I guess, to The Tempest. That was a beautiful work done by Tender Claws. Completely different end of the storytelling methods that we're talking about here with physical cameras to capture. But what you had there was a singular performer inside VR with the ability to orchestrate an entire act or entire story from The Tempest, the old Shakespeare story. And you, as participants, multiple participants in this space, could be an embodied person around the campfire with the storyteller telling you the story about the Tempest, and you could participate, and they would hand you props or tell you to go get props from the environment to play with, and you got to participate in this whole pantomime storytelling experience. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I don't think the economics of VR could support it on a continuous basis, but I loved it, and I would love to see these two ends meet somehow, right? Like
Yeah.
let's get the acting troops that are already in VR some real filmmaking tools
So
and see what magic comes out of that.
yeah, as Jonas is pointing on the comments, some of the actors from The Tempest are still performing in VR chat and selling tickets as the Ferryman Collective. And VR chat is an example of a platform where you do see a lot of that experimentation going on. But I do just want to kind of linger on this for a moment because it is interesting how there are these approaches to storytelling in VR, as in a headset, that are so completely different. They're completely different tech stacks. They are completely different things, but there are similarities, right? So you can either use a physical camera in the real world and capture, 3D 180-degree video of something real, or you can go the kind of the more VR native way, full sixed off, rendering computer graphics like you would in a game, have the actors use, either simple IK or full body tracking equipment in VR and perform either in real time, or you capture that performance and then play it back. And like, it is interesting how the differences in this kind of make the storytelling almost like a different language again, because the disadvantage of this 180 3D we're talking about, yes, it's amazing. Yes, we can't wait to see sports do it. But fundamentally, it's 3D off, right? You cannot actually lean around and move around. You don't really truly feel like you're there. It feels close if you keep your head still and you just rotate. But there's something missing there compared to actually the fact that if you even happen to lean back in your chair, that you're actually still in the world. And so the problem with this kind of theater and VR thing is it's very, very expensive to develop. It takes a lot of time. It's like building a video game plus doing a whole performance as well. Whereas with a 180-degree camera, the difficulties are in reality, you just set up a camera and film something that you're capturing. Ideally, you want, as you pointed out earlier, right, that dinosaur experience, that's rendered. That's not a capture. There's dinosaurs don't exist, right? It's rendered. And that allows for interactivity too. You kind of then ask the question, where do you draw the line between an experience and a game? But you point out that even in something passive, you can have that interactivity of the dinosaur following your head around in your hand, or at the start of that experience, the butterfly landing on your finger. These are things that you cannot do in 180. Fundamentally, that is passive, whereas like there's this whole spectrum of interactivity. And just to kind of finish on this, there hasn't been the economics, as you point out rightly, to really allow for that other genre to exist, even 180. But now the reason that it matters for headsets to go to more tens of millions of people and not just stay as high-end things and actually expand out of the market is because once the market gets bigger, each time the market gets notably bigger, you add a bunch of use cases that do become economically viable. And this kind of storytelling that was propped up by the platform holders like Facebook 10 years ago can now start to naturally emerge. And it's going to be fascinating what the results of that are.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. We appreciate the incredible context that's being added about all the work that's being done in VR chat and other places. I saw the Princess Bride perform in Rec Room. I've seen a lot of these things. Very interesting ideas that are hard. They're hard to make more compelling. And David bringing up theater, right? I've been in New York, so I've gotten to see some of the best theater productions Broadway can offer over the last year or so, and they're doing a lot of really, really neat things with audience interaction these days. There was one where like these birds flew out over the crowd in the Back to the Future one, there's a really cool special effect where it comes out over the audience to try not to spoil these things. It's like there's the whole, you'll have entire productions where the finale of the whole Broadway production is trying to like come into your space just a little bit in the way that VR offers you out of the box every single moment that you're in it. So if you've never seen the Cirque du Soleil captures that I think it was Felix and Paul did early in Gear VR days, this is talking specifically to a theatrical performance where what happens if Cirque du Soleil was performed for a single person, okay? That's where we're starting to talk about really, really interesting ideas where you look over here and you see a weird thing going on over here. You look over here, you see something weird going on over here. And then people are coming up actually to you in 3D and getting in your face. Like we've got a long way to go, and David outlined all of it for us of as soon as we access a larger market, all these use cases become viable that we've all been dreaming about.
Very, very interesting stuff. We're going to have to move on to our smart glasses section. So, firstly, we're going to talk about the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, which are displayless smart glasses. They have microphones and speakers and a camera, but they don't have a display. And so, we're just going to quickly talk about what's changed here. The kind of headline change here is that they have now rolled out the real-time speech translation, live translation. So, these glasses can now translate in real time speech between English, French, Italian, and Spanish. And so if you initialize this and someone is speaking to you in Spanish, for example, you will hear what they are saying very, very quickly. I did test it last night, brought into English in your ear. And then if they don't have glasses, which they probably don't, right? This is probably you using it with someone that doesn't. What you say will show up on the phone app. So this is kind of a experience that runs on the glasses and the phone app. And then what you're saying comes up as text on the phone app that they can read, and then they just speak back to you, and you hear what they're saying in your language, probably English, right? Especially if you're watching this show. And so that's a really incredible feature. We've seen real-time translation stuff before in earbuds, but I feel like there is something that kind of blocks the social naturalness of a conversation if you have something in your ears versus just having these glasses on your face like this. And I think this is just a really, really cool feature. And these glasses can already translate text, to be clear. With the multimodal AI, you just say, what does this sign say? And they'll look at the sign and tell you what it says. But yeah, I think this is a really, really, really cool feature. And it's going to be a fundamental pillar use case of smart glasses of all kinds, with a HUD, without a HUD, full AR. Once you do get a HUD, as we'll talk about soon, you can then have your output as text. So you don't have to hear the audio of what they're saying. You can just see it output in your language. Once you get full AR, you can put this text as anchored subtitles. So these subtitles will appear under the person's face or coming out of a speech bubble of their head, whatever you want to kind of style it as. But even the fundamental ability to do this on $300 glasses today is incredible, I think.
So Gigo asking, it's strange that it's limited to a few languages and since language learning models can do almost any language. I'm wondering how much of that has to do with local cultural sensitivities. To take one example, David, I would love for you to ask your AI glasses to give you to translate the Gulf of Mexico. And see what it translates to across Spanish and back. See if it comes back as to you as the Gulf of Mexico or not. That's the kind of hint I'm making there as to local cultural sensitivities that might affect translation across different languages.
So my understanding of why it's currently limited to these languages is that by default, this feature works using an internet connection from Meta servers. However, you can actually download these languages, French, Italian, and Spanish to the glasses. And then if you choose to do that, it takes about 2 or 3 minutes per language. Then this can work offline. So I think they've had to kind of come up with a custom model. Like it's not a generalized language model that's doing this. It's actually a custom model that can run, I'm assuming either on the glasses or on the phone, whichever it is, it's running without an internet connection. And that may be why that is. There also could be, as you say, regulatory and cultural things. They want to make sure that this isn't going to say something stupid. That could be it. So, this coincides with the rollout of multimodal AI to Europe. So, before this would be pretty useless, but for the longest time, Meta AI was only available in its full multimodal mode. By that, I mean being able to use the camera and actually answer questions about what you're looking in the US, Canada, and Australia. And so earlier this month, it rolled out to the United Kingdom. And like right now, it's rolling out to Europe as well. So even the basic voice only Meta AI wasn't available in Germany, Austria, Belgium, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland until now. And now they're just kind of opening the floodgates. So all of those AI capabilities are coming to Europe. And that includes things like Spotify and Shazam. You can say, like, what is this song? And it will use Shazam. You can link your Spotify and play specific playlists. There's also reminders. You can say, like, remember where I parked. And then later on, you ask, where did I park? And it says you parked in parking bay number 27. Things like that. These glasses are actually very impressive, I have to say, for a $300 product, and the pace of innovation over time, the pace of feature updates. Meta has kind of done what they've done with Quest 2, where everyone who owned one from the start will know that headset is a completely different thing to what it was at the start with all the software updates. They're keeping up that pace with these glasses. So Geek Odin is asking, was this shown off a year ago? Yes, this was shown off at Meta Connect, and the news is that it's actually shipping now. So on the 2 million Ray-Ban Meta glasses that are out there in the world, this feature has actually arrived. In addition, they're also rolling out Instagram messaging and calling soon. So you can already message on WhatsApp, Messenger, and your built-in iMessage and Android messages, but they're doing Instagram as well. That includes calling and video calling. If you're not familiar, if you video call with these glasses, the other person sees your first-person perspective. Let's see what the other things are. They've also launched new color variants, so that obviously matters to people who are wanting to find one that suits them. They're also announced that they're going to launch soon in Mexico, India, and the UAE. Mexico and India are massive markets, so they could really expand the reach. And while we've just talked about how all the AI features are coming to Europe, and they're already obviously in Canada and Australia and the US, there is a new US and Canada only AI capability rolling out soon, which is live AI. So right now, when you're triggering the AI, you say, "Hey Meta," every time. With live AI, you start a session, and during that session, it's a continuous conversation with the AI. You don't have to say, "Hey Meta," each time. It can see what you see the whole time. It's like being on a video call with the AI, essentially. If you've used ChatGPT's advanced voice mode with image, it's the same thing. Google has it on Gemini. It's called Live AI, but glasses are kind of the ideal form factor for this. Meta gives the example of you're cooking, right? You put these on, you start a session, you're cooking, you're talking about the recipe you're going through, or you're in a new city and you're walking around and you're asking questions. So that'll be interesting for people in the US and Canada.
Yep. What else we got here, David? Let's move through the end of the episode. I'm going to have to get going here in about 10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, let's go. So the next thing we're going to talk about is Google's demo. And this actually got a lot of attention at TED 2025. TED, like from TED Talks. Google showed off sleek smart glasses with a HUD. So from a capability perspective, this is everything that the Ray-Ban Meta glasses are, except it also has this monocular HUD. And we know it's monocular because you can see it's only reflecting in one eye, regardless of all the different camera angles they have here at TED. And so this demo was really interesting because it shows a lot of the kind of North Star use cases for smart glasses. You can go and watch it at uploadvr.com or on the TED link that we provide. And so they kind of really focus on Gemini. So some of it is just the basic multimodal stuff, answering questions about what you see. But one of the unique capabilities of Gemini they have here is rolling contextual memory. So they have some items on a shelf, and then they're looking away from that shelf, and they ask Gemini, what was the name of the book on that shelf? And it has the name right. Then they ask, where did I put my keys? No clue of where it is, just where did I put my keys? And Gemini says, oh, it's over behind this thing over there. So that's a unique capability Google's been kind of showing off. It's called Project Astra from DeepMind, this rolling contextual memory thing where they encode information over time. That's really interesting stuff, though I don't think we've seen any other company really do. It's kind of DeepMind's cutting edge research right now. The other use cases are translation. So the same stuff we're talking about before. You ask what sign says in a different language. Multi-language support. So Gemini doesn't have a mode for languages. You just speak to it in whatever language and it'll speak back to you in your language. They showed how you could take action through real world objects. So they hold up a physical record and say, play me a song from this album without having to say anything more. It figures out what album, goes and accesses Spotify, plays the music, and you see that here on the little HUD. But the coolest thing I think of this demo by far, and Ian, I think you've actually tried this yourself at Google, it was navigation. And so they ask to go somewhere, and this does seem to have an IMU, right? This is still a fixed display. They're not doing any 3DOF, but it knows when you're looking up versus looking down. When you're looking up, you see a little kind of indication of what your next step is, right? You're turning left up here. When you look down, you see a 3D, fixed in place, but 3D map that's showing you your blue route, like a little mini map in a video game of where you're going. And I thought that was the most impressive part of this demo by far. And I want that. I want it so bad. I hate walking through a city, putting my neck down at a phone, trying to follow the little blue line, bumping into, signs and stuff. I want to just have this on my glasses. I want navigation on smart glasses.
So I'm seeing everyone go off on monocular. So I tried two things at when I tried it with Google. They showed me a monocular display, much like this, and I wanted out of it almost instantly. And I told the whole room of Google people how badly I disliked monocular. It could be one of the things that could have been is I think there's a disparity between my right eye and left eye on which one is the dominant eye now. So I think my left eye is now a dominant eye, and they put the display over here. So now you got to go pick which, you got to go pick your monocular display with your dominant eye for the right, feel as this goes out. I don't. What Google is showing here is that their market is a lot bigger than any one product category. Their idea is we're going to partner with everyone, and you all get Android. You get Android. You get Android. You get Android, and we'll let the best Android rise to the top.
But Samsung first.
Yeah. So the other thing I tried was they did have a dual eye display, a stereoscopic display, and what I got out of that was a floating, basically a compass that showed me my directions in which direction, so I could turn in place to see the compass turn accurately with my direction to point me in the right direction. I don't recall seeing anything on the ground. I don't remember seeing navigation on the ground. Maybe it was there, or just blurred into my memory. But those were the two demos, and of the two demos, the stereoscopic floating wheel of compass was the coolest thing Google showed me. Over on the other headset, they showed me Google Earth in the full VR display, right? And Google Earth was phenomenal inside of the Google platform. Like, that is a showstopper. You shouldn't, I almost don't want to get a headset without Google Earth because of how powerful a platform that is. That was on one headset. Then I went into the other room and tried these glasses things, and I hated the monoscopic display, and I loved the dual eye little compass. So can't wait for them to show us more to see whether they can get anything good out of monoscopy. But I'm not feeling super great about it right now.
Yeah, I got to agree with you on that. So it's interesting that, to be clear, what Google is showing here at TED, they're describing as conceptual hardware. They're not announcing a product at this time. There have been reports that Google is working on smart glasses with Samsung. So it may be the same approach as with their headset, where Google is building the software here. And what you will actually see as a product is Samsung glasses that actually deliver this product to you as a consumer. But I think it's fascinating that both these Google glasses and reportedly the Meta glasses that are coming later this year, the HUD glasses, have this monocular display in the right eye. It's the same thing with Meta's glasses, reportedly the same monocular display in the right eye. And we saw in that report about Meta's that they plan to release a stereoscopic binocular version in 2027. Perhaps, I wonder if it's a power requirement thing right now, that just, doing this with the current displays and the current chips and everything, you just can't get an acceptable battery life out of it. It might just be a cost thing. There might be other complexities. But I agree with you. It does suck. I've tried, not the Google one, but I've tried demos from companies that supply these displays and waveguides of single eye stuff, and I didn't like it at all. I don't understand why it could be acceptable. Like, we've all tried VR where they do a shader in one eye, or there's like shadows in one eye, or God forbid, UI in one eye, and it sucks, right? Like anyone in this audience has probably tried some experience that's glitched and done that in
No,
VR. Why would you want that in real life?
David did it to me in this studio in some iteration, some bug,
On
right,
PC, yeah.
4 or 5 years ago on PC, and I'm like, David, like, I'm still mad at David this many years later for this one little glitch that you. Right. All right, what do we got? What else we got on our topics for today?
Yeah, I guess the last thing I want to say in Google is it'll be super interesting. Does Google and Samsung go all the way to HUD glasses and not even bother with a Ray-Ban Meta competitor? Or do they say this is our minimum, it has to have a HUD? That'll be super fascinating. So the last topic we're going to have here, because I think we're not going to cover the Quest things, I don't know if we'll have time, is to talk about this Spacetop for Windows software. So the idea is that this takes the Xreal. Stand by. I'm just bringing up the details here. This takes the Xreal Air 2 Ultra glasses, which are the only Xreal model currently available that have two cameras, so can have positional tracking, and it basically turns it into a spatial computing experience on Windows. So this is $200 a year software that only works on specific Intel Core Ultra laptops. That's probably the biggest caveat here. But you do get this ability to, freely position each individual application in Windows. It's not just, your three monitors or something like that. It is proper spatial computing like you would get on a native operating system like Vision OS, but added to Windows and specifically for the Xreal Air 2 Ultra. Now, the massive caveat that we've put in the article and here is that the marketing materials here are misleading. In particular, this one is massively misleading because the fundamental limitation here is field of view. You will only see this much at once, and you have to pan your head around to see the other stuff. If you want to see all of these monitors at once, you would have to place them so far away that you wouldn't be able to read the text because this is a 1080p device. So I really want to see this company and other companies in this space like Xreal produce realistic marketing, show the segmentation as you turn around of the different displays. But, if you are a fan of these birdbath displays, you like these Xreal glasses, and you currently use them for this context, you plug them into your laptop, and you are planning on getting a specific Intel Core Ultra laptop with an NPU, then this could be interesting for you. The reason the NPU is needed is because they run that positional tracking on the laptop, right? Xreal Air 2 Ultra doesn't do positional tracking on board. And so they want to do that really efficiently and low power in a way that doesn't just kill your laptop's battery. Yeah, and you may remember this product, Spacetop, as a very, very different idea. When it was first announced, it was a screenless laptop with the same glasses, but built in. You see this here, where it kind of would fold over and be an AR laptop. They decided last year this is a bad idea because for a bunch of reasons. Firstly, it's like a $2,000 one-purpose device. Secondly, because they were using like an Android OS and you don't get your full spatial computing. And thirdly, right, the glasses are kind of fundamentally part of this. You can't upgrade the glasses separately. And with this new approach, you just, you get your glasses separately, you use the laptop as long as it's compatible, and then they sell the software. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that is our show for today.
One last image I want to show. Sorry to interrupt you there, Ian.
He tricked me. You tricked me, David. This is worse than getting one eye.
One of the images that they've brought here has actually delivered something that I've been wanting to do on this show forever, and it shows you a realistic view of what the Xreal glasses look like in real life. Please load. Yes, here you go, right? Remember, I'm always trying to say these things aren't sunglasses. They don't look like sunglasses. That you can almost see it from this perspective. You still don't really see it because, as I've said before, you need to see in real life 3D or a 3D image of work, I guess, because your brain is trying to map the concept of sunglasses that it knows. But this is a better view of what these things look like in real life and why we don't really call them AR glasses, despite the fact that like they are glasses and, these ones in particular can do some AR. I just think, yeah, you will not look like a normal sunglasses wearing person wearing these. There's another good example.
Okay.
So yeah, this one actually, this comes from a marketing clip which does something that we've been pointing out a lot, and it brings up how privacy is a key use case for this. So in this marketing clip, this guy tries to look at her screen, but the screen's off and she's seeing everything through her own eyes. So you get privacy. So that is a good, that, you get this with this, just like you get it with Quest 3 Apple Vision Pro. But with Quest 3 and Apple Vision Pro, you get a much wider field of view. Yes, your view of the real world is less impressive. Yes, it's heavier on your head, but the spatial computing experience you'll get out of the Vision Pro or Quest 3 compared with a Windows laptop is just, from a field of view perspective, better. I'm trying to say everything as quickly as possible.
I know, right? We're both getting fired up for another round here. I saw the one person saying, thank goodness we have Nex, right? The thing that you have to understand about field of view, right? If you get a minimum field of view that we have here out of a Quest or a Vision Pro, where I'm seeing out here to here, I've got enough window space in front of me for about 4 to 5 windows. I can size them all really, really perfectly for just this field of view right here. One window here, 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 6 of them. I could put 6 windows in this space and read all of them with crystal clarity. And now I can store 6 more windows over here, 6 more windows over here, 6 more windows behind me if I really please. That's what you can do with a VR headset and with the tracking of 6-DoF freedom, with the wide field of view to begin with, right? That we hope gets even wider.
Yeah.
You got to turn your head around a lot more in this, right, David?
Yeah. In fairness, they do have 6-DoF here, which is cool, right? Like this is, that is really cool about this. I'm very sort of impressed that they've made this a minimum standard. They're saying we're not going to do this without 6-DoF. So these are locked in place, but you can't see them all at once. And I want to once again say, here's a great image of actually the offset of these glasses. And I want to once again say, this is a highly misleading image. It does not look like this in reality. You can only see a segment at once. That said, some people like their birdbath optics. If you do, if you're a Windows PC user, you're gonna want this. And VR Gamer Dude saying the Xreal Ultra 6-DoF is good but not great. I think that's like, you probably ran it on either a Samsung phone or an Xreal Beam Pro or something like that. This is Sightful are actually doing their own tracking on the MPU of a laptop, so it should be pretty good, but we haven't tried it out yet. And again, James O'Loughlin bringing up a good point. These are 1080p. A Vision Pro is obviously near 4K, as well as the upcoming Samsung headset, etc.
All right, that's it for us. Thank you so much. Thank you to David, Henry, and Don out there for doing incredible work, gathering together all the latest VR news. We're going to have some incredible articles and coverage on UploadVR.com, some great videos. We've gone face-to-face with various creators out there in the VR marketplace. Go look at UploadVR.com and look at games that we've covered there, where we're starting to put our focus behind the games that really make statements of art that we should all take notice of. And just, I want to say thank you to my team for the incredible reporting as they've been keeping up with the news. Thank you to our audience out there for tuning in. We'll see you in the future.
Thanks so much, everyone. Great discussion today. Really thoughtful stuff. Any further thoughts, put them down in the comments below. We do try to read them every week. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Thanks so much.